So when we see the people around us struggling with cynicism, we would be wise not to add to that toxic environment with the ways we lead. So how do we, as Christians who care for our communities, practically create a culture of love among the people around us? Does it mean we just have to walk around with smiles on our faces all the time? Does it mean we never share any constructive criticism or anything that could be construed as negative? Does it mean we have to walk on eggshells and never say anything negative ever? Of course not. A loving, positive culture is not one that ignores problems and acts like everything is perfect. This sort of passive aggressiveness can lead to its own form of toxicity, to be sure, often called toxic positivity. I think one of the most practical ways we can create a loving culture, as opposed to a toxic, cynical culture, is to create a culture of affirmation. When I first read Sam Crabtree's book, Practicing Affirmation, in college, I was probably at my most cynical point. I mean, I was a jerk. And plenty of my friends from that time could attest to that, even my wife. I'm sure that I was very exhausting to be around. I hope I'm a little bit less so now, perhaps for different reasons. Crabtree's Practicing Affirmation was incredibly convicting to me at the time, and though I rarely reread books, I have read this book probably 3 or 4 times since the first time I read it over a decade ago. In the book, Crabtree provides 8 reasons to affirm others, and I'd like to share them with you. They are: 1, affirming others earns us the right standing from which to make suggestions. It gains us a hearing. 2, affirmation lifts morale. 3, affirmation energizes people. 4, affirmation of others makes us easier to live with. 5, striving to affirm others puts us in the practice of looking at them positively, that is, looking for evidence of God's work in them. 6, affirmation constructively uses time that could have been used complaining. By commending Christ-like qualities and celebrating them when we spot them, affirmation showcases the character of God, giving him honor for being the kind of God he is. 7, behaviors that are rewarded and celebrated are more likely to be repeated. And 8, when we commend God's image in people, God is glorified, and that's why we're made, to glorify God. If we want to combat cynicism, we must realize that we need to establish foundational cultural shifts among the people around us. An occasional sermon, pep talk, book club, or other short-term remedy will not go as far as more long-term foundational changes will. So, a 4th way to combat cynicism is to call out the good in your community. When the coronavirus pandemic first began, actor John Krasinski created a YouTube show called Some Good News, which was dedicated to highlight good news and good causes around the world to counteract all of the terrible news we were hearing all the time. The idea was frankly brilliant. His videos accrued tens of millions of views while everyone was at home watching videos on the internet. He sold the brand to Viacom for an undisclosed sum, and Some Good News hasn't created another video since, which is some bad news, I guess. Anyway, it's so easy to be more aware of the problems in our world than it is the good, isn't it? I know a bit about this because of my work in social media and creating online content. I've spent basically a decade working in the industry of creating Christian online content. I've helped authors, pastors, publishers, and all manner of Christian organizations create content for the internet to encourage and help people. I've hosted dozens of podcasts, produced a handful of YouTube videos, scheduled countless tweets, and edited thousands of blog posts. And in all my years of creating and facilitating online content, only one law of gravity level, indisputable law of online content has emerged, and it is this: negative content will often perform better than positive content. What I mean by that is this: blog posts or tweets or videos that are framed negatively will get more views, engagement, and interaction than content that is similar but framed more positively. For instance, a blog post titled 3 Things Pastors Should Never Say from the Pulpit will get more views, typically, than 3 Things Pastors Should Always Say from the Pulpit. A video called Worship Leader Fails, in all caps, will get more views than Worship Leader Best Practices. We are attracted to negativity. We are attracted to failure. Negativity attracts our eyeballs in much the same way that fear motivates us to action. As we established at the beginning, the root of cynicism is a belief that people act totally out of their own self-interest and generally that others shouldn't be trusted. When we call out the good in our communities and the broader world, we do the hard work of dismantling the root of cynicism among the people around us.